guys, welcome to episode 9 of Maniacs, and this episode is entitled Ethical Education. And as you can imagine, we're going to be discussing Harvest Preparatory School, which is under the World Harvest Church umbrella. And the church, most certainly, the head leadership controls what's happening at the school, along with controls what happens at Valor Christian College. And I'm going to be speaking about not only the experiences that I was having there as a staff member and handling the issues within the school itself, but also I was the person that had to recruit for all of the open positions as the turnover was very high, and also some of the information that was coming to me and that I ended up uncovering and then took it to head leadership to make sure that they were aware, because I was very alarmed by it. And I will, then also go into the response that I received in regards to that. And then again, some of my own experiences that I had there, because both of my sons did attend school there for a couple of years. So in starting the episode, let's talk about Harvest Preparatory School. So it is a private Christian school. It's within the same building as World Harvest Church, and the school is marketed as a Christian education for your students, but also a school where there, you would think that there is, let's say, a high academic expectation. And I was very much under the impression during my time there, even after some of the test scores and the percentages, which we'll end up showing those as we kind of get deeper into the episode a little bit. But I was still at that point convinced that Harvest Prep was and could be a great school, and maybe it can be. That's going to be up to you to decide on whether education is the most important thing here for the students, or whether it's the money that is obtained by those students going to school there, and either being on EdChoice vouchers or the parents paying the tuition. So you will be left to decide on that. But because there's all kinds of requirements of schools within the state of Ohio, public schools have much higher expectations than private schools, which, I think is kind of weird that an education that you have to pay for, that the requirements are not as stringent as those in the public school, which is considered, a free education that you don't have to pay for. So with Harvest Prep, because they are a private school, they don't have to report their testing scores. And as you will see throughout the episode, and even again myself was blind to this, because I was taking what I was hearing from the teachers, from the administration at face value, and maybe it was true in regards to what their expectations were. But again, when I took my sons out of school there, they were both severely behind, and so much that my now 8-year-old, who's in second grade, had to be in reading intervention because he was 2 grade levels behind when he started second grade here in Indiana. So Harvest Prep, they use STAR testing, or they did, as their progress monitoring assessment. And although I know that they've implemented iReady, I believe, and these are kind of different tools that are used within different school systems, but they use it more for tracking data, so that they can see kind of how the students are progressing. And these are low stakes benchmarks, but I'm sure if you've got kids, you know about, STAR testing, about third grade guarantees, all of these things to kind of monitor where students are within that grade level. And these tests are usually given 3 times per year, and they can often be an indication whether a student is behind academically, whether they're, gifted academically, or if they're on grade level. And that can be compared to their peers statewide and then nationally to see where things fall. So here in a moment, if it's not up already, we're going to show a data spreadsheet for the 2018 and 2019 school year. Now, I will show more updated information as well, but I want to show this because this was some of the reporting that I was seeing when I started there, and then subsequently took it to my boss and on the executive team, had leadership, so they could be aware of what things look like and how could we improve these things to ensure that our kids were not behind academically and that they were getting what they needed. And if our teachers didn't have what they needed, how did we get them what they needed? So as you will see on the spreadsheet, for the 2018-2019 school year, there's going to be information that is for 3rd grade through 7th grade, or third grade through 8th grade, and then high school, because kids in like kindergarten, 1st, 2nd grade, they're not really given a lot of these tests. So these are going to be some of the things that stuck out to me, and I'm sure will stick out to you. So students at HPS for 7 or more years, so their entire school career, 20% were considered proficient or on grade level. So when we say proficient with these tests, that means that they're on grade level. ELA, grades 3 through 8, 38% proficient. Now, ELA is considered to be one of the most important testings at this grade level due to the implications of students being able to read throughout their life. Lots of emphasis put on 3rd grade and 3rd grade guarantee, although many of these teachers have unfortunately been the scapegoat, because once these kids get to 3rd grade, they usually are already behind. If you look at the implications of the spreadsheet along with my own experiences while there, these 3rd grade teachers become the scapegoat because now the 3rd grade guarantee is happening and they're getting all of these kids that are already behind. They're being passed through kindergarten, they're being passed through 1st grade, they're being passed through 2nd grade. And so much emphasis is put on 3rd grade that you do see an increase in the test scores, thank God. But again, as you continue to look, then those testing scores will then fall back off. So again, kids are behind, and then they're being pushed to the next grade level. And unfortunately, a lot of these 3rd grade teachers are left to kind of pick up the pieces of what has or has not been happening up into that point. And then you look at by 8th grade, 78% of students at Harvest Preparatory School are considered not proficient in ELA reading. And that should be alarming to anyone. It was certainly alarming to me, still is alarming to me. Now, I will say, as we get further into the episode, I will show you some updated score sheets, and they do look better, and that's a good thing. But there are still many alarming pieces. So math proficiency, 46%. Is the highest percentage rate that you'll see, and that's in 3rd grade. Again, the 3rd grade guarantee and all of that emphasis that's put on the kids that are in that grade level and taking those tests. But look at the 4th grade and the 7th graders. Look at their math scores. 15.8%, or we can round up to 16% of the kids are proficient, and then in 7th grade 11.8%, or let's round up to 12. That shouldn't be acceptable anywhere, and certainly, like I said, was very alarming to me, and I'm not sure why it wasn't alarming to leadership when they just told me that they knew what the test scores were. So students need at least 18 points between 5 high school OST testings to graduate in public school. And when you look at the percentages that are, either up on the screen or they're going to be up on the screen, there is a big question how a lot of these kids at Harvest Prep are meeting the testing requirements to actually graduate. So if you look at the ELA and the math scores, they seem extremely low. 29.2% proficiency in ELA and 6.5% proficiency in math. And we're talking what would be considered basic math in high school. So algebra 1 and geometry. We're not, talking, physics or anything here. And this also shows that students in their first year at HPS at the high school level are performing significantly better than those that have been at HPS for a longer period of time. So that also brings up the question of what are the implications if your child starts school there in preschool or kindergarten and then continues their education there, compared to kids that may start there in middle school or high school, where predominantly their education or a big piece of it is coming from another school district, which I kind of had the both situations for my 2 sons. So my oldest son started Harvest Prep in 6th grade, which again at that point was considered still lower school. It has now moved up to the upper school level, but my other son started in preschool and then went there in kindergarten and 1st grade. So within talking about these scores, and again we're going to continue to show those, and hopefully you got enough of the gist of what we're discussing here. But I also want to bring up the fact that Harvest Preparatory School does not accept children that are on IEPs. So this could be, kids that just need minimal help in certain areas, or kids that need a lot of help in certain areas or in all areas. And so there's no IEPs allowed. There's no intervention compared to at public schools where there are multitudes of kids that have IEPs, but they also have intervention. They have resources for kids that may be a little bit behind in certain areas, but they may be doing well in other areas, which again was the case when I moved my sons out of there, that they were doing well in certain areas, but in other areas were not. But then when you look and you compare the test scores of Harvest Prep to public schools, they're ranging in about the same area, and you can look those up for yourself, but they're ranging in about the same area, and these public schools are the ones that, again, have IEP and intervention programs where HPS does not. So you really shouldn't be seeing, in my opinion, any of these super low test scores for students that are in a school that doesn't accept any learning disabilities or any IEP statuses. So we then, why are the test scores so low? So I believe that there are several reasons for this, and I, during my time there, I was trying to drill down more on why is this happening? What can we do better? How can we do better for our kids? How can we do better for the school? And there is kind of a laundry list of reasons, in not only my opinion, but other educators, of why that taught at Harvest Prep or were in on administration at Harvest Prep, on why there are such low test scores. So first and foremost, teachers are unqualified. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't end up being great teachers, or that there are not many great teachers at Harvest Prep. I will be the first one to tell you that I believe that Harvest Prep has some great teachers. But this encompasses several different areas when I say unqualified, okay? So first and foremost is the unlicensed teachers. And so in public school, you have to have a 4-year degree in education to be a teacher. And then you also have to go through a resident educator program to be a teacher in public school. So you're investing a lot of time, you're investing a lot of money, and these are specific requirements, and you also have to take tests to get your teaching license in Ohio, and you have to have a background check and do all of these things to ensure that you get this licensure from the state of Ohio for public schools. But in private schools, you do not have to have this degree. They have something called a non-tax certificate, and a non-tax certificate is not a teaching license, but rather something that the public school or private schools, are allowed to issue to people that they think that can be teachers, or they believe will be good teachers, and they receive these non-tax certificates and then are put into a classroom. Now, they still have to be background checked, FBI and BCI. So those things are still being done, but they can receive these teaching licenses to teach in private schools that would be null and void and probably laughed at in the public school system. They would not be allowed to be in classrooms. And again, I am not, blaming the teachers themselves, and I am not trying to disregard that some of these teachers that have non-tax certificates are not good teachers. But what I'm saying is that when you have to go to school to be a teacher, you are not only getting the requirements and the education to stand behind whatever grade level or whatever subject that you're going to teach, but then you are also given a multitude of other tools to be used, like classroom management skills, like diversifying within the classroom, so that kids that might be a little bit lower in a certain subject, you can pair them with kids that may be a little bit higher. And so they work together to make sure that they are at the level that they need to be at. And so there's a lot of these things that encompasses being qualified or unqualified as far as this episode goes. And you have to prove your proficiency within the public school system that you can actually teach these grades, okay? If you cannot be licensed as a teacher through the state of Ohio, then it means one of the following, which we've already discussed, but let's kind of pinpoint these. You do not have a degree in teaching and or education. You did not pass your educator exam. You have been in trouble with the licensing board, or your license has been revoked. So along with being licensed, the educator exams that these teachers have to take to be licensed by the state of Ohio for public school systems, it ensures that you know the curriculum concepts and that you can teach them, like I already mentioned. So, I again want to be clear that I'm not saying that there are not excellent teachers at Harvest Prep, but I think that when you look at the test scores or the percentages, if you will, that they speak for themselves, and I don't need to keep harping on the fact that there, at least during my time there were way too many teachers in the classrooms that were probably unqualified. Now, again, that doesn't mean that they couldn't be a good teacher, that they haven't ended up being good teachers, or that there aren't good teachers there. But what I'm saying is that a lot of these teachers that can teach at Harvest Preparatory School would never be able to get a teaching position in the public schools, or frankly at another private school that required the proper education and the proper licensure behind it. And unfortunately, our kids are the ones that are suffering, and there are several other issues, but at the end of the day, our kids are suffering. And again, I experienced this as the HR director, but I also experienced this as a parent. So once, I kind of compiled all of this information and presented it, I didn't hear back, for a week went by, 2 weeks went by, still didn't hear back. And so then I'm asking, I'm not receiving any follow-up, I'm not receiving any communication. And so I finally am saying, hey, did you see the information that I'm passing along to you in regards to the test scores for Harvest Prep? I think that some of these things are public knowledge. And I was told, and I quote, "We know what the testing scores say." Okay, so they know what the testing scores say. I'm alarmed as the HR director for the entire organization, but also as a parent. But it was not bells and whistles to the people that could really do something about it to ensure that we were doing right by our kids and that we were providing the best environment for our kids to learn in and providing qualified teachers. So, if you want to know if your student's teacher is actually licensed, has been through the process of being able to say that they are a licensed teacher within the state of Ohio, just Google Ohio Educator Search. And I don't know if this works for other states, if you're watching in other states, but you can try it. So whatever your state is, Educator Search, and then click on the link, and then it will have a place for you to put the first and last name, and you hit search, and then just scroll down. It will tell you if your child's teacher has a valid teaching license, or if they ever had a valid teacher's license. And again, the non-tax teaching certificate is only valid in private schools, and it is not a state certified teaching license. And look up the administration too. I think you'll be surprised that there are people that are in leadership positions at these schools, including Harvest Prep, and they either do not have a licensure in the system or it is marked as expired. And some of the other reasons, as we're talking about what's happening at Harvest Prep, why are these test scores so low? Why are we, continuing to pass them along to the next grade when clearly there are some issues here? So one specific situation that happened when I was there and happened in a very quick period of time of me being there, this is going to, kind of encompass large class sizes. So every school year, unfortunately, there was a very high turnover of teachers, and they were leaving because, they were getting better jobs, they were making more money, they just didn't want to work there anymore, they didn't want to deal with the toxicity of the environment that they were working in. They didn't want to deal with being belittled by the administration, and so they were leaving in droves. And my first year there, as far as hiring teachers, we had it was probably a week before school was starting, and we had some teachers that had committed to working there and decided that they were not going to work there, whether it was hearing rumors about the place or they received other job offers that were better, but they ended up not coming. And so I had to go to two teachers that I believe were fifth grade. It was either fourth or fifth grade. And we were supposed to have three teachers in that grade level. And I had to ask the two teachers if they would be willing to split the third classroom, and which unfortunately would take their class level, the class size from the high teens up to the high 20s, which is a lot of kids to have in one classroom. And reluctantly they agreed, but they agreed and then ended up receiving a very, very small stipend where there was another salary that was not being paid, and they had to take a very small stipend for taking all of those additional kids. And both of those teachers did end up leaving the next school year, because I believe not just that situation, but it was just a culmination of events that were happening within the school, and they knew that they could go somewhere else. And whether they were making less money or not, or more money, I don't know that, but I do know that these teachers can go and find positions where they're not dealing with all of the stress and the rigmarole of the things that go on there. So moving from there, we talk about EdChoice. Harvest Prep is a big proponent of EdChoice, the voucher that they receive for the kids that when I was there, we're in a failing school district, but now I know that Ohio has passed a law where if you're in a certain income level, even if you're not in a failing school district, that you can also receive the EdChoice funds. But whereas most other private schools have like a cap on what they receive in EdChoice. So let's say they take 30% kids that are on EdChoice and the other 70% have to pay full tuition, or whatever, the percentage is. Whereas Harvest Prep does not have a cap on EdChoice, because it's obviously guaranteed money, and it's quite a large amount of money as well. And they continue to get more kids because of that. And my next statement is my opinion only, but if you took EdChoice away, most people would not pay for their kids to go to school there, not only because of the academics or lack thereof, but because of the culture and because of the high turnover rate in teachers, which some of that is, not public record, and you would only know that by what you hear. And I will tell you that Harvest Prep does not have a good reputation. And so my last, as we continue to talk about the issues here, my last school year there was the 22-23 school year, and I had to hire 31 teachers to keep 29 of them. So 2 of the teachers that I hired ended up not coming to the school for whatever reason, or they did start and they left quickly, and then I had to hire someone else to take their place. And you're talking a very high stress situation on its own, to where we didn't even know if we were going to be able to open school on time, because 2 weeks before school started, we still needed 12 teachers. And by the grace of God, we ended up getting them. But again, I can tell you from my experience, there were some teachers, I'm using that term lightly in this regard, were being hired because they were literally our only option. And if we didn't hire them, we were not going to be able to open school. And that is the God honest truth about that. So I hope that they've ended up doing well. But again, I know that this is a systemic issue. Some people want to blame COVID. I can tell you this has been an issue for very, very many years. It did not happen because of COVID. These issues have been going on at Harvest Prep for many years. So you talk, in regards to all of these issues and the low test scores, you have all of the things that we've already discussed, but you have curriculum issues. You have, different grade levels teaching different things, or even classes in the same grade level teaching different things. Now, I believe that situation has rectified itself because a qualified principal was hired that had been a teacher for very many years and was able to bring some of her expertise. But unfortunately, again, a lot of these issues were occurring for 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, it's been going on for quite some time. But the curriculum issues, the classroom management issues, state standards, do the teachers even know what they're supposed to be teaching? Leadership issues, and frankly, just people being scapegoats for things not being successful because decisions were being made at the highest level, which is head leadership, which is the people that are the head leadership of the church. They've never been educators. They've never, been in a classroom. They don't know how to run a school. They don't know what is needed to make a school successful. And so instead of taking responsibility for what's going on in their school, that they want their name to be all over and prized as one of the best, private schools in the area, I can tell you that other people are being used as the scapegoats for why it's actually not a successful school when you start looking at some of these other metrics, if you will, on whether they are doing well or not. Having championship athletics does not make your school successful. And lack of support, intervention services, lack of training of the teachers, because like I said, some of the people being hired are good, and they will likely be very good, but they have to have the support and the training and the leadership and all of these things that will help them be successful. So I know I've talked about this in other episodes, but the experience with my sons, my oldest son started going to school there in 6th grade and then went there through 9th grade and left in 9th grade. And luckily, I can't really say this for a fact, but he had received most of his education in Gahanna schools and then came to Harvest Prep and left there for another public school. And his main issue really was just being able to operate in a regular school setting where he was not getting special privileges from the school administration because, he was well liked, or maybe because I was the HR director and I was his mom. I'm not sure. But it certainly caused some issues that, he could call the principal of the school and say, hey, I want to do e-learning today, and he would be allowed to do e-learning that day. And I'm not blaming that completely on the school. Some of that's my issue as well for not putting my foot down. But then going into a school where you don't get those liberties, that you have to come to school every day, you have to do what's expected of you, you don't get second chances, you don't, some of these things are not happening. And it was quite a transition for him to realize that, the real world and real life in a regular school is much different than everyone catering to your every whim and need. And you also have to work much harder to keep your grades at the level that they were at Harvest Prep, because you were turning in things whenever you wanted to turn them in and still getting full credit, where that would not have been the case anywhere else. But the biggest, tragedy in this, which again, it's been corrected, but had I stayed there, had I kept my kids there, I may have not known what I found out later, which was that my second grader, who is now going to a very good public school in Indiana, was severely behind in reading. Although, he won the spelling bee for his class at Harvest Prep, and I was continuing being told how well he was doing and how far ahead of the class that he was, to find out that he was reading, basically at a kindergarten level in second grade. And not only, was that devastating to me, but then I had to find a way of presenting it to him so that, he didn't think that he was dumb or stupid, but that, there was a failure in the process of his former school, and that we had to now correct it. And again, luckily it only took him a couple of months to get on grade level, but it's unfortunate that that's a thing. And I can speak on other staff members, unfortunately, too, is that they were starting to realize that their kids were not getting what they needed in their education there, and very fearful to then go and say to leadership that they wanted to pull their kids out of Harvest Prep to put them somewhere else. And they were definitely yelled at, screamed at. Why would you want to take your kids out of here? Every reason under the sun why it was not a good, idea to take their kids out of there. And because as a staff member, you are highly encouraged, and some people even more highly, especially if you were in like a public facing position there at the church, that your kids go to school there. And when you start finding out that your kids aren't getting what they need and you want to pull them out of there, then you are definitely berated and belittled and told how crazy you are for wanting to take your kid out. But again, the test scores and what we can see after we take our kids out of there and see how far behind they are, those things speak for themselves. So I want to also say, for the record, that I'm not saying that there are not benefits to private schools, to private education, to Christian schools. I think that it's wonderful that my kids were coming home and they were quoting Bible verses, and they were learning how to pray and praying at home on their own, and really learning about the Bible and learning scriptures and all of those things. I think that all of those things are great. But in my opinion, you cannot negate the education piece, which is the main reason that they go to school, just because they're getting the spiritual piece. We're failing our kids if we choose to give them one or the other. And I would, having gone through this, okay, I would much rather either have my kids at a private Christian school where I knew they were getting an above average education and also getting the spiritual and the God piece, or send them to a great public school and the spiritual and the God piece we will handle at home and at church, because the education is what is most important when they're going to school, in my opinion. I'm not saying that spirituality and God are not important, but what I'm saying is at the end of the day, especially in these lower grades, these are the stepping stools for their education throughout their lives. And if these things are not built while they're young, then they are going to end up having a lot of issues as they get older. And if you stay at Harvest Prep, then you might just be being passed along to the next grade, where in any other school you would be failing. So you again can determine your own stance on this. But like I said, this is coming from someone that has seen it from different perspectives and was appalled in many areas that this was even going on. So now we're going to pull up a couple of other spreadsheets. So the first one is going to be grades 3 through 8th grade. Okay, so as you can see, the 2021 scores in English language or reading, 34% proficient, math 18% proficient. Now, and again, it's scoring all of those grade levels. 21 through 22, ELA 48%, math 23%. And then 22 and 23, ELA 48%, math 41%. And I will say, again, I'm not sure I don't have any data to back this up, so it's more of an opinion, okay, is that we hired not only a very good principal in the lower school, but we hired a very good principal in middle school as well. And they were involved in hiring the teachers. And I know, at least in the lower school situation, that the principal was much more adamant that we were hiring licensed teachers rather than putting people on non-tax licenses, which I believe was a huge help. And there were also some other administration that was able to help and train some of these non-tax, certificate holders, or some brand new teachers that may need, some mentoring. So then you look at the high school proficiency. So here's the other spreadsheet. ELA proficiency is 46%, math is 14%. And that's in 2021. In 21-22, ELA 32%, math 15%. And then 22-23, ELA is 39% and math is 12%. And again, these are not numbers that I would be proud of if I was running this school or I was teaching at this school. And again, there's no IEPs. There's no one there with any disabilities, for that matter, that would require them to be on an IEP. So what is the reason that these test scores are so low? And then finishing off, just kind of the last piece. I know this has sort of been a long episode, but there's just so much to talk about. In fact, it could have been several episodes just to kind of get through all of this. So when I was there, we had about 750 students in the entire school. I think it's closer to 800 now. But when I was there, we had approximately, 50 teachers. So let's just say on the generous end, okay, they were all making $50,000 a year, which we know that's not the case. Unless they've made a huge pay increase, but I would guess that's not the case. Okay, their salaries, 50 teachers at $50K a piece, okay, $2.5 million. Approximately, okay? You add in the administration, and because I knew what, some of the salaries were, I'm basing my figures on what I knew them to be when I was there. So you add in administration, that's $415,000, okay? So you add the 2.5 and the $415,000, and that's $2.9 million, okay? But when we go back and look at tuition costs and the EdChoice scholarships, and the reason I bring that up is because, and again, unless things have changed, if you have the EdChoice, even though that Harvest Prep's tuition rate is higher than what's awarded with the EdChoice scholarship, if you are on the EdChoice scholarship, they will take that amount of money as your tuition, and they will not make you pay the additional amount as other private schools do. So if you were to go to Worthington Christian or some Madison Christian, some of these other schools, if there was a deviation between what the school tuition was compared to what EdChoice, then you would be required to pay those out of pocket. So HPS, this is the actual tuition, okay? HPS tuition, K through 5 is $6,900. 6th grade through 8th grade is $7,800, and 9th grade through 12th grade is $9,200. Plus, there's administration fees up to $575 per year. And again, when I was there, 85 to 90% of the kids that were going there were on EdChoice. They were not, their parents were not paying the full tuition rates. So EdChoice scholarship award rates, okay, for kindergarten through 8th grade, $6,166, and 9th grade through 12th grade, $8,408. So 800 students approximately, right? We'll say 400 for the upper school and 400 for the lower school, just to make the number easy to work with. And we'll base it on EdChoice dollars, not even the full tuition rates, okay? So 400 kids in lower school at $6,166, because that's the EdChoice rate. That's $2.5 million. And then 400 kids in the upper school at $8,408. That's $3.4 million. Okay, so we'll do a little basic math here. That's $5.9 million in funds. And again, I know that that's not going to be a completely accurate rate, because if people are paying the tuition, then they're paying more money. And then if some of the kids get, scholarships to go there for no cost at all, then you have some kids that may not be paying. But overall, I would say that the number is fairly close, 5.9 million. So 5.9 million minus 2.9 million, which was what we came up with, within the salaries, which would be the main cost for the school. There's $3 million that's left. And Rod Parsley himself brags about that building being built with no debt. So you have no rent or mortgage being paid on the building. So you've got some upkeep and you've got some utilities, and I'm sure there's probably a few salaries that are left out, but you're talking $3 million of monies that are not being discussed. The classrooms are not getting upgraded. The teacher's supplies are not getting upgraded. The preschool the toys, all of the things that are in the preschool have been there for, Lord have mercy, 20 years or something. Nothing upgraded. You are paying full price for the preschool because EdChoice only starts at kindergarten. So we're not even counting what they're making in the preschool level. And then your teachers aren't even getting appreciated, okay? So it's this last week was Teacher Appreciation Week, and unfortunately, I know because I had several teachers reach out to me and show me how they were being appreciated. And again, this is not to completely slam the people that are working really hard to do what they can, okay? This is a slam on the leadership that are making all of the decisions at the end of the day. They are receiving these monies, they are receiving these funds, and they are choosing to use them in ways that are not benefiting your kids, and they are not benefiting the people that are helping teach your kids. And it should, to me, it's just it's a travesty, and it needs to be discussed, and people need to start asking more questions and doing their own research and doing their own due diligence like I should have done, and I'm regretful that I did not, that I did not know what was going on until I was no longer there, and then could kind of see things for more face value, although I did know some of these test scores and they were alarming. So coming to the end of the episode, and like I always do, I have a couple of Bible verses. The first one is 2 Peter 2:3, and it says, "And in their greed they will exploit you with false words. Their condemnation from long ago is not idle, and their destruction is not asleep." And I picked that because I feel like families are being lied to when they're not being told some of these test scores. They're not being showed the test scores. The school does not have to report a lot of these test scores because they're a private school. And so you're just being told what the school is telling you, what the teachers are telling you. And again, what they're telling you may be correct to a certain extent, but what's the metrics that are being used, and why are we not knowing some of these other things? And why do we have kids that are in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade and they can't read? Okay, that's a problem. And then the other Bible verse that I chose was Ecclesiastes 5:10. "As goods increase, so do those who consume them. And what benefit are they to the owners except to feast their eyes on them?" And I chose that because I feel like we are failing our kids at Harvest Prep, and that there is a lot that could be done to rectify the situation. And the choice is being made not to do that. The choice is being made not to hire qualified licensed teachers and pay them what they're worth. Not getting the teachers that have been there for quite some time, even if they are not completely licensed, but they're on non-tax, but they are good teachers, not getting them the resources that they need so that they can properly do their jobs and do their jobs to the best of not only their abilities, but to what these kids need to make sure that they are successful. And I hope that this episode is seen, and I hope that they start questioning how all of these monies are being spent and how they could be spent better to make sure that we are doing right by these kids at the end of the day, because that's really what it's about. But do right by the teachers too, so you don't have a constant revolving door of teachers coming in and going out, coming in and going out, because that's been proven to be very detrimental on kids and their education as well. So again, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for your messages, for watching the episodes, for liking and subscribing. And please tune in to next week for episode 10. Have a good evening.